Good afternoon. My name is Palmer. I'm with Teradata. We're sponsoring the theater along with AFCEA International, and we'd like to thank AFCEA for offering these training opportunities for you and for you to receive CEUs, CompTIA. So if you have an AFCEA membership and sit through this great presentation, we'll get you scanned in the back of the room when it's over. We have a microphone for questions, which will come towards the end of the presentation. So with that, if your cell phones are turned off or airplane mode or volume down, we'd appreciate that. And what I'd like to do now is welcome, thank him for his time. We have, Daniel Benjamin, sir. Please come forward. He is from the University, American Public University system, and we really look forward to his topic, which he'll tell us more about. Thank you very much. Come forward, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Good afternoon and welcome to this session on cybersecurity and the Internet of Things. I'm not used to standing behind a podium. I normally wear a lapel mic and wander around, so I feel caged and tethered down. So you might find me just wandering off automatically. Somebody will smack me and remind me to get back. I asked Mr. Palmer how much time we have. He said you can take as long as you want. We leave at 2:30. We have a lot of good stuff here. We have a lot of... this is a wide open topic. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can raise this up a little bit. Can we raise up a little bit or nothing there? Or okay. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be looking down at the mic instead of you all in that sense. Okay, we'll get going. Let me start by telling you about our university. This is we are a 100% online university. We are regionally accredited by the Higher Learning Commission of the North Central Association. But we do have a lot of buildings too. It takes a lot of people to make this work. The one up there, I presume, is the one on the top left is our academics building. The one below is our finance building, and that's a solar array. We have the largest solar array in West Virginia. We're located in Charlestown, West Virginia. And this is, we distribute all around Charlestown. We have about, I'm approximating about 15 or 18 buildings. We also have, where the number 14 is all the way at the top, we have a new IT building there. And on top of that, we have an observatory, so we have a 24-inch telescope, and that's to support our space studies programs. We have nearly 100,000 students. We are one of the larger universities you probably never heard of. But interestingly, I was at lunch, and the gentleman that sat next to me is a graduate of our university, and that was, I'm sure there may be some here. So we go under two names, American Military University and American Public University. So we have two brands. We are in 50 states plus DC, and we have students from over 100 countries. And you can see we were started with the military by Mr. James Etter. He's a Marine officer back in 1991. He really started this to help the folks who are in the Defense Department that move around quite often. And that's where he started, and it's come a long way since then. We have a lot of unique programs. We have some of the standard ones too. We have things on natural science, electrical engineering, cybersecurity is a big one. Information system security is another one. We have intelligence, homeland security, and a ton of other stuff. We won't read the whole list. We pride ourselves on using practitioners in the field. So we don't use just theoretical folks. All of them are well credentialed, but they also are practitioners. For example, in our school. In the STEM school, we also have a astronomer who has a comet named after him. And that's and we have a number of. We also have a number of astronauts teaching for us and so on. Let's see. We have small class sizes, normally 16 to about 25. We have 8-week and 16-week formats. And you can see we have 6 schools, and you can see the distribution, and we can also that's just something with our school, so you know who we are. So now that brings us to cybersecurity and why this is important. But before I start, let me ask a few questions. Quick show of hands. How many of you are managers? Okay. How many of you are technical? Okay. And how many are like policy analysts and so on? Okay. And how many don't know who you are? I didn't see some hands go up. Okay. That gives me a little bit of a understanding to know where to kind of. I can be very nerdy and get really deep. So I know where to keep this now. Now, one of the challenges is actually, you're being from the military, most of you being from the military, you know that, in the good old days, battles were fought on land and water, right? And I'm teaching stuff that, that you all know so well. And then in the 20th century, we expanded to air and space. Now, cybersecurity is the 5th dimension or 5th domain. And interestingly, the 5th domain has trumped all the others, because the Director of National Intelligence has made cybersecurity the number 1 threat, and even over terrorism, which surprised me quite a bit, and over proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Definitely, I was surprised. I know it was important, but I didn't know it was that important. And of course, in the Defense Department, the cybersecurity strategy is very hot. There are three prongs. One is to protect our own assets within the DoD. 2 is also to take care of, helping educate the other folks so the public understands what they need. And in case there's a large enough threat of or cyber attack of significant consequence, to know how to deter them and maybe destroy them. And the third part is also to come down and actually defend our homeland. Now, interestingly, one of the differences between cyberspace and the other domains is that everybody has representation. Almost everybody, every organization has representation on the cyber front. And so that's one of the challenges. And so we're going to lean this towards 2 factors: what's on the front and the weakest points in the cybersecurity strategy. So we're going to start with just looking at the landscape of where the market is. So here you can see smartphone sales, and these are thousands of units. You can see Samsung is all the way on the top, and Apple right below it. And if you're just looking at manufacturers, Samsung stayed ahead by introducing the Samsung 6 and the 6 Edge and so on. That helped them out. And actually, Apple was a little below, and they managed to come up to second. With the larger versions of their iPhones in the last year and so on. Okay, and this is for the whole year. You can see this is based on operating systems. So again, 4th quarter of last year, Android is on top, and this may surprise a lot of folks. Normally, most folks think that the iOS system, the iPhone, is the number 1 platform. It is not. You can see there's a significant difference. There's 80% is Android, and iOS is only 17%. That is a surprising statistic. And here are some of the common mobile apps. I'm not going to read them out. Facebook, understandably, and as expected, is all the way on top. And Google, of course. And Google has a number of, you can see they have Google Search, Google Play, Google Maps, and Gmail. So they have a lot of representation. If you bundle all of them together, Google will be on top. And these are some of the projections over the next few years. So you can see desktops are going to be coming down, laptops are going to be coming down, and we know that, right? And then tablets are going to be going up. But look at cell phones or smartphones; they're going to be going up quite a bit. Okay. Now, why is all that important? I'm trying to keep an eye on time as well. So one of the reasons all this becomes important is there are some basic protocols that govern the communication and data distribution for all these devices, and you might recognize some of them. You see HTTP up there on the top right. You see FTP, file transfer protocol and so on, and SSH for tunneling and so on. You see Ethernet. So you see some of the standard protocols, and this is the standard OSI model. And I'm not going to get deep into this because I could spend a lot of time here. If this is a very nerdy group, we would. This is where the fun is for those of us who get into the depths. But the message from all these slides on protocols is that there's a lot of places for people to come in and infiltrate the system. There are a lot of attack vectors, as you would say. Okay, and this is another distribution. You can see the 7 layers are going all the way on top, and you can see the different protocols again over here. And I'm going to move beyond this. So the number one frontier we have that's a challenge for us in cybersecurity is cell phones or smartphones and tablets, for that matter. Here are some of the, the top risks that were identified based on surveys by NISA, which is the European Network and Information Security Agency. Number one was data leakage. And data leakage comes from, what happens is you might go to the airport and forget your cell phone and leave it behind. Somebody gets it. So they can get into your data. Once they get into your data, they might find all the information they need, your bank accounts, those you work with, and so on. So data leakage is a big concern. So in other words, they can get access to devices. And this becomes important when we get into the Internet of Things, and I'll come back to this later. And then let's see, I'm just going to go to decommission phones on the same vein. When you're done with your cell phones, how you dispose of them. Most people don't clean it out and just delete all the data. They just kind of send it back or get a few bucks for it or whatever. And your decommissioned phones have the same issue. There's a lot of data on that. Y'all know well enough about phishing, so I won't go there. And network spoofing. I have apps where I can call somebody and pretend I'm somebody else. So I can call you. I don't have on this phone. I don't like to play around with those things. But there are these, and this is common stuff. This is not fancy stuff. This is very common stuff where you can actually, you can change your phone number that comes up on the other person's device. So you can pretend to be calling from Georgia, for example, or California, even though you might have a local number here. Let's see. And we know a lot about malware and of course, network congestion. That's the other thing. Denial of services are very common. We've seen that often enough. Okay. Now, if I were to ask you, I'm not going to ask you because I know I don't embarrass anybody, but we found most often on the work smartphones, there's password protection and other options. But they found over 70%, even IT professionals in the security field, don't have passwords on their personal phones. Does that surprise you? And but they've asked for a show of hands. I can see some people smiling too. So, and I can see some little people nudging each other too. That's very common, right? So in other words, if I get a hold of your phone, I just swipe in and do whatever I do. I have full access to whatever you need. So the minimum thing we need to do is use passwords. And this is something the President of the United States, as well as the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, they're trying to encourage all citizens to actually have smarter authentication, whether it be biometrics or whether it be two-factor authentication or multiple-factor for that matter. So that's the key. And they're trying to encourage everyone to do that because passwords can easily be hacked. And smartphones become kind of important because you also saw the recent privacy discussions between the FBI and Apple, right? And I think that whole act was put on by Apple just to raise the conversation because I think everybody knows that, they can be hacked into. And that's the other thing also to beware is smartphones are not that secure and people use it very casually, and maybe that's the message out of this, we use this device much more casually. I know friends who actually do all the banking on these devices, and it's like, it hits you in the guts because it is so open and not that secure yet. Okay, then Bluetooth. This gives you another attack vector. Actually, see, I have this little Bluetooth device that I use all the time. I forget when I go through airports and I set the whole thing off. I have to go back again because I forget I have it on. But then when I stay connected, whether it's this device or anything else, somebody else, if they can get into that stream and they're close enough, can actually access and get your information. And the question is really pairing. So they can do, just like you do network spoofing, they can do similar concepts and get in. Then free Wi-Fi. Everybody loves it. What's the first question? Even you fly Southwest or any airline, do you have Wi-Fi, right? In fact, when I was coming back, I think I was going from Fort Lauderdale, Chicago last week, and they didn't have Wi-Fi, and people they were nice, but they were very disappointed, right? Everybody loves free Wi-Fi. And this probably is, everybody assumes because it's with Southwest or because it's with some, like a Marriott or some big hotel, it is safe. And Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi is definitely not safe. Because if I'm in there and I can set up some kind of device to listen into your, to your stream, I can definitely get your information. And once I get it, and by the here's the other sad thing, even if you have encrypted it, I can still get it, and then I can run my algorithms on my own time. Okay, unlike the iPhone thing where they, once they try to crack it 5 times and it wipes the data out. Once I capture your data, I got total command over it. So again, the message here, definitely encrypt. I'm not saying don't encrypt, but don't assume that that's enough. So definitely be careful on public Wi-Fi. I definitely don't do any shopping, banking, not with public Wi-Fi. The near field communications, and almost everybody has it now. So if I have an Android for my personal, I have an Apple for my work. So either one of them, when I see some colleagues, I want to exchange information, I don't even need to, connect it or, message it. I just go close by and just push a button, they push it and they get it. It's very convenient. Near field communications are really good. But the problem is, if they can get it, so can somebody else, right? So that is the challenge. And so definitely the message with some of these kind of things is turn things off that you don't need. If I don't need near-field communications, so my near-field communications is always off till I'm talking to somebody, I want to send something over. I just turn it on, and send my information over and send it back. And talking about near-field communication, I'm going to take a little aside. Some of them, there are many cards, credit cards also that, where you can use near-field communication, so you don't have to actually swipe it like you did, okay? So you can actually just pass it over something close by and it'll pick up what you need. The problem with that is somebody can actually, if you have a handbag or you have it in your back pocket, somebody can pass by with those devices and collect your information. So definitely those things are to be guarded against. Apps. I watch, being in cybersecurity, you just become antsy about a lot of things in life. I'm very trusting by nature, but when it comes to devices, I'm very cautious. But I have friends who brag about they have like 600 apps and so on. And I asked them, how do you know that app is trustworthy? Well, they said, it was there, So just the fact that it exists is good enough for them. So we need to be cautious of the apps. Definitely check out the apps before you start doing anything. Then I have a lot of colleagues who don't update their phones because actually some people are afraid if they update the operating system, it might accidentally destroy their phone book. And they don't want to take that risk because they heard of somebody that had a bad experience. So they stay around with the older versions. Now what goes on in real life is the bad guys are always exploiting vulnerabilities. So, and the good guys like like Apple and Samsung, they're fixing the operating systems to mitigate for those new exploits. So if you're not upgrading this, you're behind and you're giving the bad guys an advantage. So definitely upgrade. And if you have to back up your phone book before you do the upgrade, that wouldn't make sense. Everybody on your work computers, you probably have Norton, McAfee, and some other devices, right? For sure. So you have a lot of good antivirus software built in. But on your cell phones, you just stay with whatever you got when you bought it. Norton, McAfee, all of them have smartphone versions for your tablet, so you can even protect your tablet. So definitely, especially if you're going to do banking, if you're just going to use this just for making calls, don't worry. You're just giving away some of your friends' numbers, and if somebody hacks in, they find out who your friends and colleagues are. But that's the only risk you expose them to. But if you're doing banking and other things, you better make sure you have some other antiviral software installed. Now, settings and permissions. Now, one simple one. Location is a good thing. Making your phone location aware is good, because when you're using navigation, they need to know where you are. That's very convenient, right? We all use that all the time, right? We don't. In the good old days, we used to use MapQuest, or in the real good old days, we used actual maps. Then we went to MapQuest, and now we don't do that anymore. You just kind of, use your phones. Very convenient, but why does anybody else need to know where you are, right? And yet we take that very casual. And actually, if it's location aware and you're taking pictures, and by default, if you don't change the settings in your picture, in your camera settings, it's also time stamping and location stamping your images. So somebody can go in, and that's all within the metadata within that image. So we can go in with other apps and find out where that image was taken. So you might just you're going on a vacation, and so I know, and I see your latitude, longitude, and say, that's in Florida. So we know you're in Florida, right? And sometimes you give that, and sometimes you may give that away with, with the location itself. But people post it on Facebook, so you can find out all those details. So the question is, if an app does not need to know information about you, don't expose it. Okay, definitely location is one big piece of information people don't need to know, because they're actually, I know when we teach cybercrime, we actually go to actual cases. There are many cases, and now they are textbook cases where, where people have gone on vacation, posted pictures, or found it through their latitude, longitude, and they find out that somebody is away in Florida, so definitely I'm not my home address, right? And so they know they can easily go and empty out my whole apartment. So we definitely need to go into every application and control the settings and permissions. And on the reverse, before downloading an application, if they don't allow you to set permissions and give them permissions to opt in to some of those things, do not download those applications. Excuse me. Now, this is for all the nerdy folks. If you're managers, you're probably not into this. Some of my deep, folks from IT, they like to, jailbreak into their phones or go to what they call rooting, much like the root, like the root passwords on your Unix and so on. And then they can actually define what they want to do. They can change the way the operating system works. They can add more functionality. It's kind of fun. It's a nerdy thing. You want to see what else can you do, right? That's just fun. But the danger is once you do that, you're exposing yourself because you're turning off a lot of the inherent security apparatus within the system. Okay, so that whole thing was setting. Now you're probably wondering, so why are smartphones important? Smartphones are an important device in the world of IoT. There are many applications that are driven by smartphones. Actually, somebody did a big project when they wanted to study what goes on in forests. They actually got people's old cell phones and wired them all, tied them to trees, and found out when some things are happening. And really, they wanted to see how many people were actually, what do you call, logging. Is that the right term? Where they're logging and chopping down trees for wood, firewood, and so on. So they actually were. The way they did that was they put a lot of cell phones around the forest, and then anytime there was a noise, that was filtered out, and they knew where that occurred because it had location awareness, of course, for that factor. So now coming to this Internet of Things. So if we had a problem with cell phones, the Internet of Things makes it even worse. And this is the same slide, but this is based on the whole year as opposed to quarter. So you can see, and by the way, there's thousands of units. So we're dealing with 1.5 billion units on the smartphone, right? So that's a pretty large number. But when you get to the world of the Internet of Things, the number of sensors changes quite a bit. So the total number of sensors, and by the way, when I say sensors, a lot of them are not passive sensors. These are smart sensors, and that is another big challenge. Okay, that's 212 billion available sensors by 2020, and this is Gartner data, and IDC, raises that even higher. And there's about 30 billion of those sensors are connected to the net. Okay, and just to put this in perspective, 212 billion is about 28 times the total population of the world. Okay, that's as many sensors. Now the question is, why is this important? So the good thing is scale. Having so much of connectivity is a good thing because you can come into everything you do. You can control your homes, your cars, and your clothes actually. And we'll talk about smart clothes in a second. It's really good. But now the threat vector is so much more wider open, or the attack surface now. You have so many places you can go and exploit the system. So that is one of the challenges over here. Scale is also your enemy over here. Here are some of the different types of sensors. You have some on the top for vision. There are some for location. And some to know whether you're there or not, and some whether you're close by or not. And then you have electromagnetic sensors. Of course, temperatures all over the place. Let's see. And to measure humidity. So you have a variety of sensors. And actually, there are a lot of good sensors, a little more expensive to detect chemicals and gas. And, a lot of you may have a carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide sensor in your home. So it's the same kind of thing, but these are much more sophisticated. They are directly connected to the net. And a lot of you probably have this, one of the Nest thermostats and smoke sensors in your home. The nice thing about Nest, they're one of the earlier people. There are many others who are in this market now. Once you set it and you once you do your settings, when you leave your house, it will automatically turn the temperature down if it's in winter. Okay, or if it's cooling, in summer, it doesn't need to cool it that far down. Excuse me. So it knows once you left the house, because you can see where your cell phone is, because it's location aware, and so it can actually automatically turn things on and off and so on. Now that is a great convenience. But all I have to do, okay, excuse me. Excuse me. So all I have to do is actually sit with the little temperature gun, an infrared temperature gun, and just bounce it off your windows, and I can tell when you're in the house or not. That's without even being a hacker, right? So now, if I'm a hacker, all I do is get into the data, and just by seeing the patterns, I would know whether you're in the house, you're not in the house, and whether you leave your house every day, and you leave between 6 o'clock in the morning till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then temperature comes back up. So I know that you're out of the house on a regular basis. I know your pattern. The way we scope, in the good old days, scoping was you had to park your car somewhere, sit there and watch people's houses and track the patterns. You had to dedicate one person totally to one house at a time. But here, you can scope hundreds of systems just by watching patterns. So that's some of the dangers. While they're luxury, there also is a consequence. So the bad guys are just as creative as the good guys are. And one other aspect in this Internet of Things world is that people are Oh, let me go back a second. Innovation will always outpace security. Okay, as a general principle, innovation always outpaces security. You heard about the left brain, right brain thing, right? Innovation is more from the right brain, where it's more creative. You're coming up with new ideas. You're making things work. Whereas security is a left brain thing, where you are making sure it's working correctly and that people cannot get in. So people with the innovators are normally just moving ahead. They want to come up with new ideas, and they normally let the market and time determine things. And by the way, even you take all the traditional operating systems, right? They started out, and they keep on making them better and better with time. So that the same principle applies here. Now, here's another statistic. We talked about number of sensors, right? We talked about 212 billion, of which 30 billion were connected to the net. And they're smart sensors. Fortify did a recent study. They found that over 70% have a lot of vulnerabilities. And of those 70%, about 50% of them had at least 25 different vulnerabilities. So in other words, each sensor had over 25 vulnerabilities that they detected, okay, from data leakage and many other things. So you can see this is a major concern. Okay, and this is this is where we came up with the concept of cyber physical things, where we connected the physical with the cyber. In the good old days, you had the physical world, you had all your temperature, your thermostats and your cars, and you had your cyber world. In today's world, they're connected. And now you have driverless cars, and even in your cars that you're driving today, probably there's a lot of cyber automation. And one simple thing is, it's OnStar, right? If something happens, it automatically calls the person. So you already are connected that way. But now you have your brakes that are automatically, connected and so on. So they have a lot of systems. Now let me. This is the same diagram from an automobile standpoint. So braking is also computer controlled, but that's pretty neat. So if you don't know how to drive on ice, and let's say you get stuck, the car recognizes what goes on and can help you out. So that's a nice feature. But the danger is, once it's computer controlled, somebody can hack into the system and do things with it. And I think you all read about this in the papers, maybe 4-6 months ago, where somebody took over an SUV and actually landed it, put it in a ditch. It was all very safely done, just to make a point. So, there are websites. I'm not encouraging you to go. I'm just telling you things so you'll be aware. There are places you can go to find out which are the easiest to hack cars, okay, and what the hacks are. So there's a lot of things like that. Okay, now to give you a little bigger idea, so you can see these are the different sectors. You got the public sector enterprises, you got the hospitality sectors, and so on. So within each sector, there's a ton of stuff to connect to. So you can see there's a whole lot of sensors and other things to connect to. And the idea I want you to get from here are the messages. There's a lot more than you can handle. So if you only had one building to protect, all you do is put a security guard, then you're fine. But when you have 1 million buildings, how do you manage security? You're probably distributing, maybe have 2 people or maybe 10 people kind of ride around and so on. And that's what's happened in law enforcement, right? You don't have one police officer for every single citizen. You might have 20 people in the town, they drive around, some people stay on the phone, and so you manage the numbers. So now, coming back to the net, this is some of the evolution. When the net was started, they did not have security in mind. Okay, you all heard about Tim Berners-Lee, and there are other people that have been credited to the internet, but Tim Berners-Lee is by and large the one that it all goes back to, who started the simple protocol of exchanging documents. But when he started it, his idea was to exchange documents between 2 places. he never thought security would ever be an issue, right? But like all good innovation, people keep on building upon it, and then they expanded, became a world of commerce later on, and then we started having a lot of applications, and of course we're going through quickly, and then you got into the Internet of People, and they popularly call it the Web 2.0 with a lot of social engineering and so on. And now it's evolving to the Internet of Things, where everything is being connected. And we'll get into some of the everythings. Okay? So the scale, with the fixed systems, there was only 1 billion of them in the 1990s. Now you're talking about, about close to 30 billion being connected. So you can see the scale again is growing. Here's what the market is like. Gartner estimated that this will be a $1.9 trillion marketplace by 2020. And IDC actually revised this estimate. They estimate this will be a $14 trillion market. So for those who are vendors, for those who are aspiring entrepreneurs, this is exciting. Very exciting. It's a big market, and in all kinds of fields. Healthcare, banking, schools. You can see it's in all kinds of places. Okay? So we're going to look through some scenarios. Okay? You all have been hearing a lot about the driverless car, right? Google has their own, and so on. Now you can see that typically there's a sensor all the way on top, and this is a LiDAR sensor. It's called light. Just like you have radar, this uses light instead of radio waves. It uses light waves, and you call that infrared kind of waves, and you call that light detection and ranging, just like you had radio, waves detection and ranging. So that's the way you do it, and typically they rotate so it gets a full view of what's going on around. And then there are lane guidance systems, which you already have in many of your cars. You put the left-hand signal on and try to move. There's a car that's going to let you know, so it guides you. But actually over here, it takes it a step further. It doesn't just tell you what's in the next lane, but it tells you, are you in the lane? Because remember, this is driverless, so it doesn't know how to stay within the lane. Okay, but they also have radar systems, okay, to detect other things, what cars are nearby and their blind, what happens in your blind spots and so on. So it has a number of different things, and this is very small. And then there's braking systems, there's steering systems. There's tons of other stuff, right? And then also about managing the engine. When do you turn the gear ratios up and so on. So there's tons of factors. How do you optimize the engine? It's a really neat feature. But the challenge here is, what happens if somebody hacks into it? Now let's take terrorism, for example, as an example. Somebody had to physically come in and put their bomb somewhere. I mean, it's a sad thing. It's a sad state of the world we're in. But somebody had to physically come in and put a device somewhere to do what they wanted to do. In today's world, if they wanted to shut down, say, the Brooklyn Bridge, as long as somebody can be close by, and by the way, this is true not just for driverless cars. This is true for the cars we can have today. If they can hack into it, they can just block it by just turning some cars' brakes on. And they can cause some accidents. They can shut down the whole bridge for several hours. And if they do this all around all the major bridges in the U.S., it'll affect our economy. So they can stay at a distance and actually do this. This is in maritime cybersecurity. They have a system called the Automatic Identification System, where on any one of the larger ships, you can see where the ships are. You can see where the lighthouses are, where the buoys are, and so on. So it's a neat thing because you know where things are by looking at a screen, and especially if it's a foggy condition, it helps you. But the challenge is, if I hack into the system, because there's only a piece of information, I can post a nuclear vessel in some place where it is not. And actually, this is what was actually done. Some people faked a number of ships as they neared a port. So it caused, just like you have a denial of service attack, it was that kind of denial of service because everybody assumed there were a lot of ships around that port. So they waited all the way at the back, so they can come in when it's ready. So that's one way to do it. Then another way, here's the other scary thing. If you want to start a war, but I'm not giving you ideas, I'm just trying to tell you the ramifications are pretty big. Before you planted physical devices, it affected a small area, and people could make decisions. Here, I could fake an Iranian nuclear ship near the near Israel, and believe me, that's going to be the start of the war, right? So you can trigger a lot more things just by manipulating information. So you can see the potential for exploitation, the consequences are very high, and that's why these systems have to be really, revised, get more sophisticated. The protocols are extremely weak. And I told you earlier that innovation is a good thing, and by that, I'm not against innovation. I love to innovate and do things myself, but it's about responsible innovation is the key, that we need to also look at cybersecurity whenever we innovate. And before I talk about this, actually, let me tell you about Intel. Intel has a chip called the Curie chip. It's a small little chip which takes very little power. So it's not like the bigger Intel chips that you have in your computers. They're small little chips. And you can embed them in clothes, in small devices. It's not as sophisticated as the chip in your computer, but it does has a lot of good functionality to do basic things on your jackets and so on. So, for example, clothes of the future will be smarter than what they are today. So let's say I am jogging, and let's say my heart rate goes up too much. My jacket will start talking to me and say, I think you need to slow down. I think you're hitting very high levels. And let's say I ignore it, and let's say I pass out. It can automatically call 911 and dispatch somebody. It knows my location already. So that's what my clothes could do that, right? So that day is coming. It's not too far off. Actually, they can do it today. It's just what they don't have the costs down enough. So once the costs come down, it'll be very different. But the costs have come down significantly. The good old days, sensors were very expensive. Today, you can get sensors for a few cents. Of course, if you want a highly, with high granularity and high resolution, then you pay for that. But if you want some general temperature sensors and proximity sensors, they're very inexpensive. So you can see clothes are going to be very different. Then since we talked about automobiles, let's talk about refrigerators, right? So your refrigerators will also, tomorrow's refrigerator, you can have some obnoxious ones, so you go and try to pick up some ice cream, and it might tell you, what's the last time you weighed yourself, right? But at the least, it can observe your patterns, and it can create a shopping, it knows that, I go pick up some salad every day, I pick up some fruit every day, so it knows what I picked up, so it can tell me automatically, these are your patterns, and make a weekly shopping list for me. And of course, that's at the start. In the future, it actually could send that to the grocery store and just let them have it. So when I'm getting close enough, they'll just pack it and just pick it up. So, and remember, just like the Nest, it can detect when by my cell phone, when I'm nearing Safeway or whichever place you shop at, and it could send the list right then in a just-in-time manner, so I can just go right over to Safeway. And it can remind me, by the way, you're near Safeway, on your way home, why don't you just pick it up? Right? So there are all kinds of scenarios, but so there are a lot of good advantages. Now, so let's see. Let me come back here. So here for the military, definitely it's very valuable. It's very valuable. You can just see. There's so many advantages. With the heavy systems that the military needs to protect themselves from physical harm. You can have cooling systems that are automatically done. When the body heats up again, it could do some things with the clothes itself. So you can see it, and also it's a motorized exoskeleton So a soldier can now carry a lot more weight than they could on their own, because the one on the right is an exoskeleton. Then you can have smart offices, so you can see there are so many other factors, and this raises another concern. Let's say I got my car and I want to park somewhere. Now, right now, I kind of drive around the block looking for an empty spot. I mean, if you park in DC, you're used to making a few rounds, right? Now, your car could be automatically connected with all the parking systems, and it could tell you where the nearest open spot is. And it could guide you to the spot because you already have got a navigation system, right? So it could do that. But now you have one complexity. You have to exchange data between your car and the parking lot or whoever else has their own system. So data sharing has to take place. Now the danger is data sharing is anytime I share data, I'm letting people know. So I'm assuming trust, right? So I'm assuming trust that that person is a good person. They have a need for me that they can meet. But what happens if they're the wrong person? And that's the thing. You don't know who the right, good people are, the wrong people are. So you do a lot of data sharing. And in public buildings, okay, you can see they have all kinds of things. For example, if they want to cause they don't have to start a whole fire. All they do is trigger the fire alarms. The building will be vacated. And just say there's an important meeting. Maybe with some high-level authority, they're making some decisions about some major things. Somebody can do that and get everybody out of the building and delay a major decision that helps another client out to do their deal. So you can see there are a lot of things you can do once you get into the cybersecurity world. And there's another look also, and you can do the same thing with the smoke controls and so on. This is like a smart building again, and homes are getting smarter as well. And we already talked about homes. So again, it's a great feature. And actually, let me make a quick comment about homes because there's so many things going on. A lot of people have video cameras in their homes, right? Very common in today's world. I would assume about at least 25% do. I won't name the country, but there's a country that has a website with videos of what goes on in people's houses. Okay? And it's not just 2 or 3 people. They got hundreds of thousands of such videos. Okay? And it's primarily one country that has done a lot of this. I wouldn't say it's state-sponsored other than state-allowed is maybe a better word, that they've not gone after those bad people. But it's easy. It's hacking into your system is easier than you think. So that's the message actually today, that we need to pay attention. Let's see, what else? And of course, the electric grid. Now, this is a big challenge. The good news is the grid is getting more and more distributed. You can get smaller, people can start solar energy or fuel energy, and they can start their own cells and so on. And a lot of houses today, you have solar grids, solar panels on top of the houses, so you can feed some electricity back to the grid. But again, one person hacking it can easily take down a whole city, and that's a way to hurt the economy. So this is no longer just about the individual. See, the challenge in the cybersecurity world, as compared to, we talked about other 4 domains, the land, air, land, water, air, and space. I know that I'm not in the Air Force, so I'm not going to be flying and fighting anybody there, right? So I'm not on the war front. Now, I appreciate all the folks, all of you who are in the military and who defend us, and I appreciate that. But I know I'm not in that war front myself, directly. But in the cyber world, the war front is on your home computer, on your work computer, everywhere. So the warfare is right where you are. And if they can get into one person's computer, they can easily get in somewhere else. In fact, the whole target scan, the target issue, remember the target hack maybe 2 years ago? It all happened because they got into the air conditioning vendor's system, and that's how they got into target. So the same principle. So they can easily get into your house, and if you're connected to your and through your, let's say through your router in your home, you're connected through your work, to your work, but they got your home computer. They can plant something in the router and start detecting things, maybe your passwords and some other things. So they can easily start exploring things. So the cyber warfront is in your home today. It's very different from the other domains. So that's the other message to take back. And getting into your space is easier. They can sit in another country and easily, be visiting your home and you don't even know it. This again is another picture where you have smart hospitals, smart power, and so on. So it's talking about the electric grid from a different perspective. So with that, I got plenty of stuff. I can keep going on this. And the cybercrime is another big issue. And the Internet of Things just opens itself up. Okay, with that, we got about 10 minutes. Okay, if anybody has questions, there's a mic there.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. My name is Moses Anderson. In today's world, we have quite a number of devices. When we're doing risk management or risk assessment, we can't assess all of them. So what we do is we assess based on categories of assets. So we choose categories of servers, of laptops, and mobile phones. Now we're looking at 212 billion devices, the sensors, that is. Do you know of any framework that's in existence or in development for conducting risk assessment that is portable when we're dealing with sensors in the IoT?
Good question. Now the good news is, while I've exposed the risks, right, there are a lot of people who are actually right here within this hall. You can visit a lot of places here where they're building devices, frameworks, protocols to protect us. And some of the protocols actually are based, just what you said. You talk about different categories. They have different level of risk management. So, for example, let's say, once you enter your workplace infrastructure, they assume I'm in my workplace network, so I'm safe, right? So there's a lot of trust among colleagues. So if we all work at the same company, we know we can exchange certain information freely. But there you cannot do that because you can plug in one of those devices and plug one out. So they'll have different levels of trust. So the levels of trust infrastructures will be multiple and need to be managed. It's a challenge. I think there'll be a lot of exploits before we can start sealing them up. It's a learning process on both sides. But good question. And by the way, I must apologize because I'm leaning down. I'm not looking at you all most of the time. That's what I don't like. I'd rather be out there and I can look at you, and that's what I do miss. Like I'm talking, I feel like I'm talking to this podium here. I apologize for that. Other questions? Good question. I didn't bring a lot of the websites, but there are a lot of public websites, whether you go to Norton, CERT, DHS, even whitehouse.gov, even with their NICE is maybe a good place. The National Information for Cybersecurity Education, NICE, they're with NIST, NIST, right? So they have a lot of good information because they actually the president's designee to really educate the public, grade schools, high schools, and colleges and so on. Good question. So a lot of sites, just be informed. And the message here is not to be, see, it's like this. Life is full of risks, right? The moment anytime you cross a road, you could get hit. But you cross the road. You can't just stay on one side of the road, right? That'll be a miserable life. Once you leave your house, you're at risk, right? But guess what? Even in your house, you have other risks, right? There has been sinkholes in Florida, and the guy got sucked. So life is full of risks. So the message is be aware and be responsible, and don't assume that, if I'm on the battlefront physically, I can see people shooting at me. But in this world, bullets are flying all around me, and I think, man, this is a very safe world, and I need to not be that casual. And actually, the interesting or the concern is the world is not just more connected. People are depending on communicating via the net a lot more than ever before. So we depend on those devices a lot more than before, but we are not as cautious in what we do. Some of my friends share some stuff, and and I also talk about identity theft. I can easily get, if I'm a bad guy, I can easily get all I need to, steal the identities. They put all kinds of stuff on that, So we just need to be more responsible, and that's the message. But yet you cannot live life without risk, but you have to learn how to manage risk and mitigate risk.
Well, that was outstanding, the slides, the content, and the message. Certainly the WWW is the Wild Wild West, and just be ready and be careful out there. So this concludes this session. Again, thank you, Dean Benjamin, and we look forward to engaging with you if you have time. Okay, thank you. That's it for today. We have 2 sessions tomorrow here in the theater.